I don't have a... Hello, thank you for having me. Got my little small book of notes today. It's my little kind of... I really encourage it for people, especially young people growing up. Carry a little book of notes around, because I think it's quite important to often capture all the little things that are running around in your mind. And often when I'm asked to do talks in various places, I have this little book that I refer to, and all my little random ramblings that go in there come into here. So I'm going to talk about a few of them today. So this talk came along. I was asked to do it at quite an interesting moment in my life a few months ago. I often get quite angry about stuff to do with trying to make the world a better place, and perhaps the way we're not doing a very good job. And yeah, there was one particular thing that's been really a moment of realization that I had, and it's been on my chest for a while. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to kind of vent a bit of frustration at that. So we live in a very interesting time. You've had some interesting talks today. I think earlier on you probably had some, certainly what I've seen today earlier, actually I've missed the earlier ones, but the last few talks on sort of challenging our world today and how we should approach it with the environment, certainly quite strongly as a root. And I work in the environmental sector and in the social sector as well, and it's important that we always continue to strive to try and improve social justice, environmental justice. And it's quite difficult when you have a lot of very depressing facts coming out in the news. I think it's upsetting when you hear what we've just been hearing about the amount of resources that we've used in such a short space of time. It's upsetting when you read about global warming and maybe the way that people aren't listening about it still, the way that the sea levels are rising, polar caps are melting, the gap between the rich and the poor, the environment and the way that we treat it here. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the State of Nature report that came out last year. It's quite important in my line of work, and they're identifying that almost 60% of the species in our countryside are in decline. Barn owls, which were synonymous with our countrysides when I was a child, are vanishing, and it's an upsetting thing. There is food poverty throughout the nation. People are struggling to have access to good food, local food, organic food, food that isn't harming the environment in any way. And I find myself thinking, what are we doing about it? And is that enough? And I don't think it is, quite frankly. But that's just a small part of what makes me angry at the moment, I think. It's the kind of constant anger, that one. It's always there and has been for many years. But I think one of the things that I've recently realized is making me quite angry is the apathy from people that I come across. And that's always existed, and it's the general public. There is often an apathy to some of the things we talk about. Some of the things can be quite damaging to hear, and your brain shuts down, and you don't want to process it, and you don't want to face it almost. And all right, I can understand that to a certain extent. But the people that are starting to make me angry at the moment are the ones that do care about it, but do nothing. And you may have some friends. You may be involved in stuff yourself. You may also be one of these people as well. I certainly was for many, many years, like a kind of recovering smoker, if you like. The kind of smoker that quits smoking and then turns around to you and tells you how awful you are for smoking. Well, that's kind of the person that I've turned into about the way I treat the environment. So I did an environmental degree. I went traveling. I came back. I was like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to get rid of material goods. I spent a lot of time in India. It's amazing. You should all go there. And I thought, everyone's got to change. We've got to make the planet a better place. But everybody kept turning around and it's been like, it's pointless. What's the point? Global warming isn't really that bad. What people say about peak oil isn't really going to happen. You kind of get you look at all the scientific work out there and you see all these big companies and they're all funding, these big evil companies, and they're all funding research into perhaps how global warming doesn't really exist, how perhaps it's not going to be a crisis, that we're going to be okay. And you just think, what's the point? What's the point in trying such a big mountain to climb? How can I climb that mountain? How can I really make a tangible difference? So for many years, I kind of regressed and shied away from that, and I just carried on trying to live my life, doing what I thought was right and working away. And then I had a moment a few years ago where I don't know what caused it really. I just kind of woke up one day and it was just, I'm just not happy with what I'm doing with my life. And I turned around to my partner and I told her, I think I'm going to quit my job. I think it's time that I did something important. And amazingly, she was very fine with that, despite all the possible financial insecurity and the several months of looking around for the right job and waiting and waiting and waiting. And thankfully that right job came about, and I was one of the lucky ones that fell into that. And now I've got the opportunity in where I work to have a real tangible effect on people, on the environment, on the way that people are thinking and approaching work, on the way that people approach social justice. It's not just about the environment, it's about how we treat people, how we look after people, how we look after ourselves, how we watch out for one another, how we encourage each other as well. And it's about the positive messages as well. There's a lot of negativity out there, but there's a lot of wonderful people doing a lot of wonderful things in this world. I mean, you've heard several talkers today, and all of them are all very inspiring. And it shows you that change is happening. I think the millennials, I read the other day, one of those wonderful Facebook stats that pops up on your feed, 80% of millennials want to be involved in ethical business. Fantastic. Not sure how true that is, but fantastic. It's a step in the right direction. And the thing that winds me up, though, is on my Facebook feed, and especially around times of elections, you get people who are always, there's all these memes, I think they're called these days, memes and these little videos that people are putting on board or on their Facebook page, and it pops up and they're all like, oh, you got to get behind Jeremy Corbyn because he wants to change the world and he wants to make society better and he wants to do this and that and the other thing. And I think, maybe that's mainly because I've got a very lefty bubble of friends these days, but I think it's a very nice bubble to be in, I think. Very warm. But I think the thing that frustrates me is that I know a lot of these people, and I know they're not doing anything about it. It's one thing to vote for someone you believe in, to put them into office, to make a change for you, but that change will never happen unless you actually make a difference about it, unless you get off and you get off your ass and you go and engage in the community in one way or another to make a difference. And I think it's not the most difficult thing to do to ask of someone to give up 8 hours a month. Maybe? That's not that much, is it? 8 hours a month? 8 hours in a month, that's 2 hours a week to do something good. It's not a huge ask. And I know it's difficult when you have a full-time job and you're all working very hard, and I appreciate it is hard, but if you can't give up the 8 hours, then there's things you can look inwardly into your life. So you can think about everything that you do in your life. Am I eating too much meat? Should we have like one night a week of vegetarianism? That's how my partner and we started. We did this about 4 years ago. It roughly coincided when I started working at an organic farm, but and had a huge abundance of vegetables all the time. But we were like starting to question as to whether, do we need to eat so much meat? I don't know. We kind of always felt that you have to have meat with every dinner you eat, every meal you have meat with it. Well, actually, let's try not doing that, As a consequence, we're not vegetarian, we're not vegan, but we're probably about 80% accidentally vegetarian now. And it's a nice thing. It's really, I lose weight. I was putting on weight quite badly, but I lose weight now. It's wonderful. I feel better, I feel fitter, I feel stronger. And if everybody did one meal a week that was meat-free, imagine the effect on the whole of the planet. It would be phenomenal. And it's not just that. You can look at what you're doing. You look at your car, your transport. Do I need to use my car as much? Again, we had a moment, and I do things with Transition Bath, and I work on the transport side of things, and I see the issues we have around air quality in Bath, and it upsets me. But I grew up in Bath. I went to this school. I used to walk to school every day. Very surreal moment walking here earlier on today. It took me back many years. But it upset me how much the air pollution was. So we put a self-imposed congestion charge. We drew out a line all around the city, and we said, you cannot drive the car within this boundary. If you drive the car within this boundary, you have to put money in the pot. Every bit of money that went in that pot then went on making sure that all the products in our house that we were using, we cleansed to being green products. We had to start somewhere, so we created this pool, and now you will struggle to find anything that is not environmentally friendly in our house. And I think that's a really small change you can do. It's a really easy thing to start in your own house. And again, if everybody started doing those little changes in their house, the effect that would have on the environment is absolutely massive. You don't have to, it's a scary thought trying to change the world. It really is, and it's a huge mountain to climb. And there's these barriers that are down that stop you. You know, it's difficult to climb them. It's difficult to break them down. But when you start looking at the small little changes you can do, the things that you can do tomorrow when you wake up tomorrow morning, and the positive impact that will have on the world, you know, do not underestimate it, because that's where I started. And 4 years later, you know, I find myself in a situation where I'm running an organic farm that is helping people who are vulnerable, that is helping the environment and showing a new model for how perhaps we can grow food and engage with other people. I'm involved in Transition Bath, and I'm trying to make a difference as to what we are doing. I give up 8 hours, well, normally a bit more, but say 8 hours a month roughly for transition, and that's having a positive effect. I'm involved in that. I run an organisation in Bristol about getting local food into Bristol. We started last year called Bristol Food Producers, and it's networking all these wonderful, amazing agroecologists, all these growers. And sometimes I just take a moment just to step back and think, I probably am involved in something a bit bigger than I ever thought I would be. And that started very, very small. I had to make the changes in my life. And that just spiraled one by one. I knocked off one thing, I knocked off the next thing, I knocked off the next thing, I knocked off the next thing. And all I want to say to everyone here today is you have to forget that notion of doing something one day. Don't always think, oh, you know, I'm gonna make this difference in the future, I'm gonna change it. You know, forget one day and think day one. Think tomorrow is day one, about the first time that I'm going to change something in my life that has a really positive effect, and do not underestimate what that effect will have. Thank you very much.